Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to offer floor amendment number 23 for adoption.
Thank you. Clerk, has the copies been distributed?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Copies of floor amendment number 23 have been distributed.
Thank you very much. Representative Sharon Hall for the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt floor amendment number 23.
Is there a second to the motion?
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Representative Marcus Oshiro seconds the motion. Discussion, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I offer floor amendment number 23, and this deals specifically with the section on Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, page 8 of the bill. This is section 572.1, section 3 of the bill, which carves out what the prerequisites are for a valid marriage contract. So the section states, in order to make valid the marriage contract, there shall be permitted between two individuals without regard to gender. Each of the parties at the time of contracting must be at least 16 years of age. And number 3, it says, neither party has at the time any lawful wife, husband, or civil union partner living, except as provided in section 572A. Mr. Speaker, the amendment that I offer, and to be clear, I support the amended language and not the underlying bill, is to clarify that we should include the words reciprocal beneficiaries, domestic partners, or any other party to any other legally recognized union. The point is, we want to terminate these other contractual relationships so that we're not promoting additional benefits. So for example, the way this bill is written right now, Mr. Speaker, I could be in a domestic partnership in the state of California with a same-sex person. I could then come to Hawaii, and then I could enter into a same-sex marriage, not dissolve or terminate that domestic partnership, get into a same-sex marriage with somebody else, and obtain all those benefits. So I could get benefits with another partner in the state of California through my domestic partnership, as well as in the state of Hawaii through my same-sex marriage license. And I don't think that's the intent of this, Mr. Speaker. So I just wanted to be clear. This was, in fact, asked to the Attorney General. He did recognize it as an issue. He said it would have to go to the courts in order to be clarified. And Mr. Speaker, again, I submit that if any of our laws that we pass go before the courts for judicial review, we have failed. This is truly a friendly amendment to ensure that polygamy doesn't exist, and that the intent really is to terminate all of the other existing relationships so that all the benefits will carry in the same-sex marriage. So respectfully, Mr. Speaker, I do stand in support of this floor amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion on this item?
Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Representative Rhodes.
In opposition.
Please proceed.
With regard to the reciprocal beneficiary relationship concern, current law, HRS 5726-7 says if either party to a reciprocal beneficiary relationship enters into a legal marriage, the parties shall no longer have a reciprocal beneficiary relationship. So that moots the need for that part of the amendment. With regard to the unions performed in other jurisdictions, HRS 572B-10 in essence says that if you have a relationship in another state that is equivalent to a civil union, we'll treat it like a civil union, which can then be converted to marriage through the rules that are in this bill. So for those reasons, I oppose the floor amendment. Thank you.
All right, further discussion on this item?
Mr. Speaker, just brief
Representative
rebuttal.
Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and for the Speaker for allowing me to insert this amendment. I think something that we have to look at very carefully is on page 8, line 8, which clearly states, except as provided in section 572A of Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1. And it clearly states in that section of the bill that you will have continuous rights for reciprocal beneficiaries and civil union partners, and they will be terminated upon a same-sex marriage solemnization. So already this section conflicts because this section on page 8 only talks about civil union partners, and then it says except as provided in 572A, and then 572A specifically refers to civil unions and reciprocal beneficiaries. So there's a conflict right now on its face in this bill. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I respectfully ask that this body support the floor amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Further discussion on this item? If not, Representative Saiki. You want to call for the
I'll call
question?
for the question.
Question have been called.
Second.
It has been seconded. All those in favor of the question? Well, let's put it this way. Let me go back a little bit. Is there anyone want to have written comments? Begin on the left before I call for the motion.
Mr. Speaker, may I please request permission to enter additional written comments into the journal?
So ordered,
Thank you.
Representative. Anyone else on the left? On the middle, any written comment? On the right, any written comments? Then all those in favor of...
Mr. Speaker,
yes.
may I have written comments?
So ordered, Representative Foley. Anyone else? If not, then all those in favor of stopping debate signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The debate ends. And now we're going on to the main motion on Stand-Com Report number 23. All those in favor of Stand-Com Report number 23 signify. What's the problem? Of the amendment. Of the amendment. Everybody getting tired. All those in favor of amendment number 23 signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. Nay. Motion fails. Okay, we're on amendment number 24. Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer floor amendment number 24 to be considered by the body.
Thank you very much. Clerk, do we have the that been distributed on number 24?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Copies of floor amendment number 24 have been distributed.
Thank you very much. Representative Howe, will you make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of floor amendment number 24.
Is there a second to the motion?
Speaker.
Representative McDermott?
Second the motion.
Second the motion. Thank you very much. It has been moved and seconded that amendment number 24 pass. Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of floor amendment 24. Again, this is a very similar problem that we just had in floor amendment number 23. It deals with a separate section of Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, and it deals on page 9 regarding the application for a license and limitations. It says, to secure a license to marry, the persons applying for the license shall appear personally before an agent authorized to grant marriage licenses and shall file with the agent an application in writing. The application shall be accompanied by a statement signed and sworn to by each of the persons, setting forth the person's full name, date of birth, social security number, residence, their relationship, if any, the full names of parents, and that all prior marriages or civil unions, if any, other than an existing civil union between the persons applying for the marriage license, have been dissolved by death or dissolution. If all prior marriages and civil unions, other than existing civil unions between the persons applying for the marriage licenses, have been dissolved by death or dissolution, the statement shall also set forth the date of the death of the last prior spouse or the date and jurisdiction in which the last decree or of dissolution was entered. Mr. Speaker, the friendly amendment that I am offering is to include the words reciprocal beneficiaries or domestic partnerships or other legally recognized unions. Again, I think that the intent of this measure is to ensure that people who are entering into marriages do not have other contractually recognized marriages out there, whether you want to call them reciprocal beneficiaries, domestic partnerships. In this situation, we've limited it only to civil unions. And again, I don't think that was the intent, as based on 572A in this particular bill. It makes it very clear that reciprocal beneficiaries and civil unions will in fact extinguish upon the solemnization of a marriage. And so we've left out the terms reciprocal beneficiaries or domestic partnerships. And again, Mr. Speaker, as we know, same-sex marriage is in fact legal in other countries. So I'm not sure what the language is, what they call it. They may call it some other reiteration. But just to be clear, we added in the catch-all, which would be or other legally recognized unions, just to ensure that those relationships are in fact terminated so that we don't have people who have multiple benefits from multiple different relationships, essentially polygamy, Mr. Speaker. So for those reasons, again, I offer this friendly amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you very much. Further discussion, Representative Rhodes.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition, for the same reason that I opposed floor amendment number 23, I oppose floor amendment 24. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on this item? If not,
Mr.
then...
Speaker?
Yes, Representative
Could I have the words
Carroll.
in support? Could I have the words from the representative from Kapolei to be inserted in the journal as my own?
So ordered,
Thank you.
Representative. Any further for written comments before I call for the...
Yes, Mr. Speaker, same request.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, just a brief rebuttal. While
Proceed.
I very much appreciate the comments from my chairman from the Judiciary Committee, again, I don't know if it was the intent of this body to sanction multiple relationships, multiple partners. I don't think that was our intent. But if you read this language very carefully, it only requires that a prior marriage or civil union be extinguished. So it does not require that reciprocal beneficiaries, domestic partnerships, or other legally recognized unions be terminated before entering into a marriage in the state of Hawaii. Again, I do not believe it's the intent of this body to sanction polygamy or multiple relationships, contractual relationships. So again, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues and the chair of the Judiciary Committee to please consider this friendly amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Yes, Representative Sankey.
Mr. Speaker, I call for the question.
Question has been called. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Anyone wish to have some written comments to this item here? If not, then we'll call for the question. All those in favor of stopping debate or ceasing debate signify by saying aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is passed. So now we're going to the amendment number 24. Those who are in favor of amendment number 24 signify by saying aye. And those opposed say no. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? The amendment fails. Okay, right now we're on amendment number 25. Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer floor amendment 25 for consideration by the body.
Thank you very much. Clerk, has copies been distributed?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 25 have been distributed.
Thank you very much. And Representative Har for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of floor amendment number 25.
You have a second to the motion? Yes, Representative Oshiro, second the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Thank you very much. Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, Mr. Speaker, I offer a friendly floor amendment number 25. This deals with page 3 of Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1. On page 3, section 2, continuity of rights, civil union, and reciprocal beneficiary relationships. And this is a section that makes it very clear that a civil union couple or a reciprocal beneficiary couple who seek to enter into a marriage may do so without first terminating their civil union or reciprocal beneficiary relationship, provided that certain things occur first. And what's interesting in this section, Mr. Speaker, is if you move to page 4 of the bill, lines 8 through 15, section D, it clearly states here that the rights, benefits, protections, and responsibilities created by the civil union or reciprocal beneficiary relationship shall be continuous through the marriage and deemed to have accrued as of the first date these rights existed under the civil union or reciprocal beneficiary relationship, provided that the civil union or reciprocal beneficiary relationship was in effect at the time of the solemnization of the couple's marriage to each other. Mr. Speaker, the floor amendment that I've offered would strike this section, and essentially what we're doing right here is we are allowing people to require rights in other person's properties retroactively. So essentially what we're saying is upon the solemnization of a marriage, if you had a prior relationship pursuant to a reciprocal beneficiary or a civil union, now all of a sudden any rights vested back then. The problem with this section, Mr. Speaker, as that is being proposed, is the fact that same-sex marriage was not legal in 1997 when reciprocal beneficiaries were enacted. So it creates a problem. You're now trying to vest an interest in personal property, in assets, when same-sex marriage was not in fact legal in 1997 when reciprocal beneficiaries was first passed. And the same argument goes for civil unions, Mr. Speaker. Again, many same-sex couples may not want that. So I just think that we need to proceed with caution. Again, Mr. Speaker, to be clear, I am not a family law attorney, but I was in fact contacted by many of my friends who are family law attorneys, as well as estate planners. They say this is a very problematic section. And again, this is not necessarily equal, Mr. Speaker, so we have to proceed with caution in these issues. We cannot create more family law problems, and this section does in fact do that, which is why I'm offering the amendment that would respectfully delete this section. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, again, I stand in support of the amended language and not the underlying
All right, Representative,
measure.
thank you much. Further discussion, Representative Rhodes.
Mr. Speaker, oppose the amendment.
Please proceed.
If you look at page 4, line 3 through 7, the act of seeking a license for or entering into a marriage under this chapter shall not diminish any of the rights, benefits, protections, and responsibilities that existed previously due to the couple's earlier status as civil union partners or reciprocal beneficiaries. Reciprocal beneficiaries, civil union members, and married couples do not have the rights aren't all the same, but some of them are. And all this does is allow, for example, if you're in a beneficiary relationship, reciprocal beneficiary relationship, you can go visit your partner in the hospital when other people are not allowed to, a situation like that. So can someone in a civil union, so can someone who is married. So all this provision does is allow those rights that the reciprocal beneficiaries and civil union members had to continue on uninterrupted into the marriage relationship if they choose to become married, if they were in one of those relationships before. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Further discussion on this item?
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
brief rebuttal.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much appreciate the comments provided by the Judiciary Chair, but I think he just underscored the problem with this bill. So he just read Section C, the act of seeking a license for or entering into a marriage under this chapter shall not diminish any of the rights, benefits, protections, and responsibilities that existed previously due to the couple's earlier status as civil union partners or reciprocal beneficiaries. Again, Mr. Speaker, then you know what? I submit that Section D is essentially, it's essentially repeating what's in Section C. It's unnecessary. It's basically redundant because I agree with what he says in Section C. So why we have Section D is it's unnecessary. It's basically redundant, and therefore, for the same reasons, Mr. Speaker, I respectfully request that we pass floor amendment number 25. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Sankey.
Mr. Speaker, I call for the question.
Question has been called. Is there a
Second.
second? It has been moved in second. Any written comments on those on my left?
Mr.
Representative
Speaker,
Howard.
may I please request permission to enter additional written comments into the
So
journal?
ordered,
Thank you.
Representative. Any written comments on those in the middle? Representative Marcus Oshiro.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Written comments, please.
So ordered,
Thank you.
Representative. Anyone else in the middle? If not, any written comments for those on my right? If there's none, then I'm going to be calling for the vote on the question. All those in favor of stopping debate signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passed. Debate is stopped. We're going to the main amendment and the amendment number 25. All those in favor of amendment number 25 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying no. No. Motion fails. We're on number 26, Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer floor amendment number 26 to be considered by the body.
Clerk, has copies been distributed?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 26 have been distributed.
Thank you very much. And Representative Har for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of floor amendment number 26.
There is a second to the motion. And Representative Marcus Oshiro second.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It has been moved and seconded. Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the amended language and not the underlying bill, to be clear. Mr. Speaker, this section is actually right after the previous section we just previously discussed in Floor Amendment 25. So on page 4 of Senate Bill number 1, House Draft 1, lines 16 through 19, Section E states, any rights, benefits, protections, and responsibilities created by the solemnization of a marriage that were not included within the reciprocal beneficiary relationship shall be recognized as of the date the marriage was solemnized. Mr. Speaker, the reason I offer this floor amendment, it would be to strike this section because it seems to conflict with the previous section that said that all rights, benefits should exist. So now all of a sudden we're saying any rights and benefits that were not recognized, all of a sudden will only go back to the date of the marriage. What is it? Is it going to go, are we doing it back to the date of the RB or the civil union, or is it now date of solemnization? We're conflicting. Again, there's major problems in this bill, Mr. Speaker. For those reasons, I continue to submit that this floor amendment is a friendly floor amendment. I wish that the body and the Judiciary Chair would seek these amendments and take them very seriously. For those reasons, I support the language. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Rhodes.
In opposition to the floor amendment.
State your position.
Well, basically, my arguments are the same as the Vice Chair's. Any rights, benefits, protections, and responsibilities created by the solemnization of a marriage which were not included within the reciprocal beneficiary relationship shall be recognized as of the date the marriage was solemnized. And that's the whole point, that some of the benefits of marriage, there are more benefits to marriage than there are of civil unions or reciprocal beneficiary relationships, and that's why you have to have this provision. Mahalo.
Thank you very much for the discussion. Yes, Representative Foley.
Mr. Speaker, in support of the amendment.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I'm during the course of the 55-hour hearings, we heard a lot of discussion from a number of attorneys, which included the Attorney General, regarding some of the problems that currently exist in the bill that would have to go to court. Mr. Speaker, I think it's problematic if we are going to put the people of Hawaii through the expensive transactions of going through the court system to deal with some of the deficiencies that exist within this bill, Mr. Speaker. So I believe we also, through those hearings, we came across a number of problems that exist in regards to legislative intent and the ambiguity that exists in the language of bills that become problematic for the actual legislation. Mr. Speaker, this is an opportunity for us to address some of those problematic issues that we know that do exist, that the Attorney General himself acknowledged very clearly are problematic with the bill. And Mr. Speaker, if we are going to put the people of Hawaii through a very expensive court process to find out what exactly some of this language means, Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't put the people of Hawaii through that. We should take advantage of the opportunity now. We should demonstrate leadership and make these amendments to the bill, if this bill is going to pass, to make sure that we are not laying a burden upon people, but actually just displaying leadership and making sure that we are addressing issues as we see them, and we know they exist, Mr. Speaker. The Attorney General said as much, and for those reasons, I do support the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Foley. Further discussion,
Speaker?
rebuttal? Yes, Representative Carroll.
In support, and I'd like permission to have comments inserted to the journal, and also have the words of the representative from Kapolei to be my own.
So ordered, Representative. Okay. Can we have a rebuttal, please, from Representative Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I don't disagree with the Chair of Judiciary, but I continue to submit, if we are in fact going to do this, we're going to move in this direction, let's do it correctly. And so all I'm saying is again, these are friendly floor amendments. I am genuinely trying to improve this bill for our same-sex couples. If this in fact is going to pass, why would you have two separate dates? I understand, again, whatever was not included, but we can try to find we can reconcile this. And again, the previous floor amendment, it just seems to be contradictory. And again, finally, Mr. Speaker, I do take great umbrage to the fact that we are being rushed in this. I understand that people are frustrated, but this is the democratic process. We debate. We usually don't have 10 minutes on a floor amendment. And these are all brand new floor amendments, Mr. Speaker. You know that. And so I'm a little bit, it's a little bit upsetting for me because Democracy is not being allowed to take place in action right now. I understand that everybody is anxious to vote, but the fact of the matter is these are very serious floor amendments, and they are friendly, as I've indicated. I want to make this law the best that it can be. As one of our teachers said in a hearing, when I teach my kids, do your best, have you folks done your best? And Mr. Speaker, I would submit we haven't done our best in this bill, particularly for our same-sex couples. So why wouldn't we make it better? That's all I'm saying. It's not about being for the bill. It's not about being against. It's about making the best law possible. And I would submit that's not it, and that's the reason for these friendly floor amendments, Mr. Speaker. So for those reasons, I continue to stand in support of the amended language. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Saiki.
I call for the question.
Thank you very much. Representative Rhodes, the second.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded. Before I call for the question, all those, those on the right side, if you wish to have written comments, please signify. Those in the middle, if you wish to have written comments. Yes,
Thank you,
Representative
Mr. Speaker. I rise in
Awana.
support of the amendment, and I'd like to ask that the words from the representative from Kapolei be entered into the journal as if they were my own, and also some additional comments.
So ordered,
Thank you,
Representative.
Speaker.
Anyone else? Representative Marcus Oshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Written comments, please.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the middle? Yes, we're now going to the right. Representative Bilotti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Submit written comments in opposition.
So ordered. Anyone else on the right who wish to make any comments? If not, then we'll go into the motion to cease debate. All those in favor of to cease debate signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion is passed. So we're going to amendment number 26. Those who are in favor of amendment number 26 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those who are opposed signify by saying nay.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Point of information.
Motion fails for.
Are you calling these amendments out by vote only and not by the representative who introduced them? Speaker,
yes.
I'm either confused or you're doing stuff that's confusing.
Recess.